I can hear something calling. It's calling me every day. If taking a chance is a crime, then I've got hell to pay. I've been walking the streets in my mind, trying to find a new day. Keep on searching until I will find, until I find a new way. I'm gonna say something, I hope you don't mind. It's time to rearrange. I walk round in circles, I'm going nowhere. It's time to make a change.
Chuck, how you doing today? Thanks for joining me. I appreciate it.
It's good to be here. How are things up in the Northeast?
Chuck, we're surviving up here and we're like you, we're trying to make a difference. And that's why I was excited to have somebody with your knowledge, experience, and just your overall personality. You're infectious, my friend. So I was really excited to have you on here today.
Well, listen, I really enjoy your podcast series, and I'm looking forward to getting into some interesting conversation today. Make the world a better place, right?
Yeah, I think so. And you know what? And I will say before we even start, let's give a tip of the caps here. We got our caps going here. A little bit different, but my little kind of Irish cap here and Chuck with the cowboy hat. I love that we're representing. So we're off to a great start. Um, Chuck, with that being said, I've been connected with you somewhat for a little while now on LinkedIn. I'm actually not sure why we haven't connected more, but I'm glad we finally are. But could you maybe give a brief introduction of yourself for the audience?
Sure, absolutely. So, I came into the security business, if you will, via law enforcement. This is a very traditional path, military or law enforcement. So it was law enforcement for me. But uniquely enough, I started very, very young in this business as a law enforcement police explorer here in Texas, South Texas. So I spent 6 years in a police car and logged 4,000 hours on patrol by the time I was 19, and became a commissioned Texas law enforcement officer at the age of 19. You could do that back then. You can't do that anymore. You got to be 21. Also, my mom had to buy my bullets, so because the federal law, right? You got to be 21 to buy back then. Bullets for your handgun. It's a Model 19. I think I've had that thing since my duty gun I got when I was an explorer. So I was 13 or 14 years old, 4-inch Model 19. So it's been around a long time. So yeah, and part of that evolution kind of looks like from there, I worked in law enforcement and I was in crime prevention. Well, you can't say crime prevention without saying loss prevention or shoplifting or hot checks. That was big in the big businesses back in the day. And so I needed to understand from the perspective of a corporation to do a good job as a law enforcement officer, a crime prevention officer, to understand what's important to the businesses in my community. So that's where kind of security came in. But security back then was more, like I said, loss prevention, retail theft, shoplifting, hot checks. Obviously, aggravated robberies that happened at convenience stores, but they didn't call it crime. That was risk for them. They labeled it, called it risk. In law enforcement, we called it crime. So that got me into security, and I joined ASIS International as a law enforcement officer that was back in Colorado with the Denver Mile High chapter back in the 80s. And so I could learn what's important to them. So I got certified as a CPP, which is the ASIS gold standard, right? For security, being a security director, and having the credentials, right, that go with that. Did that as a cop. And so while I was a cop, I also moonlighted only one off-duty uniform job. That was with a neighboring university. But then everything else I did was plain clothes, and I worked in security. Literally for corporations and different entities, advising and consulting and acting as an ad hoc security director while in law enforcement. And that's how I came to learn the security world. Eventually, I was the CSO for two or three different big companies. One of them had 8 million merchants and banks around the world. Did all that. I did a stint before, right before that, as a chief of police. So I got a little experience there. But I've been in the private sector since about 2002, full time. And then after being a CSO, I just said, I'm going to go build my own world. And that's where Friends of Chuck comes into place. I built this organization based on the principles that the most important thing that there is relationships and friendships in the business. So that really means putting friendships over finances if you walk the walk and talk the talk, right? So I built that network out to be over 100,000 people in 100 countries. And it's pretty much the largest private network. And the whole idea is I know you know me, and I help you find a job. We all work together in this network, right? Create business opportunities, lifelong friends and relationships and networking to a whole nother level under the Friends of Chuck mantra, which is this: one, dream big, because nobody likes to dream small. Number two, know how to have fun. Otherwise, don't take the job or don't do it, right? What's the point? And lastly, get shit done. Who doesn't like to get stuff done, right? To feel good, to be able to bring value and self-worth to yourself and actually help. And nobody argues those three, one, two, and three, that mantra in the Friends of Chuck world. So it's become its own informal entity. And for the last 10 years, I put on an event in the ASIS International at the event, not by ASIS International, but called Texas Night. And it fulfills that mantra of bringing everybody in. And last year was the biggest ever. And of course, it was in Texas and Dallas at Gillies, and we had about 4,000 people at the event. So yeah, so and I listen, I build businesses, sit on boards, so advise boards of innovation and technology. I'm involved in different types of intellectual property. I get involved in some really pretty cool stuff, and I, like you, I get to meet cool people.
Yeah, well, man, just hearing your story, it gets me really, really juiced up. And I'll say it now, I'll be waiting for my invite for next year's Friends of Chuck in Texas. Me and the wife will have to come down there. But fun time. So couple things. And you know what I really love about the podcast? I'm sitting here, I have questions in front of me that I want to ask you, and I'm ready. I'm kind of they're out the window. Um, you I wanted to touch on, I love your three tenets, I'll call them: the dream big, have fun, and quite appropriately get shit done. I
Yeah.
want to focus on number two.
Okay.
Here's why. I think we all want to dream big, and most of us, we all want to dream big. We all want to get shit done. Chuck, I think the hard part is today having fun, because there's always that balance between having fun and our responsibilities, that horrible word called responsibilities. What do you kind of say to people about that?
Listen, it's hard, right? Because we're all human and we all have our faults, right? Look, O.J. Simpson just died, right? And I just watched a couple of old documentaries and new documentaries, right? And I got to meet him one time. I have his autograph as well, a long time ago. But I kind of use OJ as an example. And in society and in life, you think you know people, but you really don't know people. People close to people, yeah, they have a better idea. But the reality is for everything you see on the exterior, there's always stuff going on. And I'm very mindful of that, of all people that I work with and I have to interact with. You don't know where people are coming from, and then they don't either. And that was through the example we were talking about off air, right? This entanglement of being a human and interacting with other people. It's hard. It's hard for everybody. But look, knowing how to have fun is so critical, but it requires you in this entanglement, your body, your mind, your soul, and your spirit, to be honest with yourself. And that's really hard to do. It's like, I need this job because I have to actually feed myself so I can have a job, right? Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Some people, I got to have this job because I'm paying child support, I have cancer, right? All these, there's a million different reasons why, right? But the hard part is know how to have fun, because ultimately you're not going to survive or thrive if you're not going to have some quote unquote fun in that what you're doing. That's meaningful. Things that are meaningful are fun for me. If I like to move the needle, right? And to a fault, I will go help people to a point where I almost find myself in trouble because I promised somebody I would do something. My reputation is all that I have. That's why it's Friends of Chuck. Chuck Andrews, right? That's all very intentional because, man, I have to work at protecting my brand and my name all the time. And it's just so critical to have fun, because ultimately, yeah, the rooster's going to come to roost. It's just a matter of time. So if you can be honest with yourself up front that this could work, or if you get in there, make it work, right? Don't compromise. And then it's okay to go somewhere else. You're going to have 20 jobs, 20, 30 jobs in your lifetime anyway, right? Go find where it's always going to be a win-win and it can be fun to do. But the hard part, to answer your question, people have a hard part being honest about that, right? Because they have to survive, or this reason or that reason. That's what I've come to learn in talking with people. And you become a better employee. Everybody wins. Production, culture, right? Advancement. Literally, people who sit down and develop new intellectual property, they're more apt to be productive and actually get something to the U.S. Patent and Trade Office if they're having fun. And it's true. So that's kind of my reflection on that piece, and just trying to get people to be honest with themselves up front before they commit themselves.
Yeah, as you were saying that, I really resonates with me because, we talked a little bit about this off air, but even this podcast, the Bare Essentials, like, man, it's fun for me meeting people, speaking to people like you, like I tell people now, I feel like some days it's selfishly, I do it more for me than I do it for anybody else. It is about that.
Sure.
Chuck, knowing how big your network is though, how do you handle the amount of directions that I'm sure you're trying to be pulled in, right? So we talk about having fun, probably not fun for you to have to tell people no, but also you can't really protect your reputation if you're getting pulled in so many different directions. How do you deal with that?
Man, this is, boy, that's a that is a good one, because it is true. I will just tell you, it is a whole lot of work. All right. So one of the things I'm going to do today is, one of your listeners is going to get an autographed book from me, from my book. Yes, sir. S.I.R, Strategy, Intelligence, and Relationships. So I'll let you figure that out. You let me know who wins. But in that book, well, I talk about maintenance, right? One of the greatest failures in the world is maintenance. I don't care if it's you, your life, a business, a giant corporation, an oil company, electrical company, piping company. Everybody does maintenance. Terrible. It's painful and it's expensive, right? And most people don't do it, that well. So that said, because people really struggle with the maintenance piece, I write about that to try to help people in exactly what you said, right? That you've got to be consistent and keep up. I put that burden on myself. Like, literally, what's amazing is after you build a true relationship with someone, and it's hard. On this wall that I have right here, there's probably 20,000 business cards. The ceiling's 20 feet high and it's 40 feet wide in my podcast room. That business card goes back to 1971, my very first one, right there on the wall. All those people, every day, all day, is a constant reminder of what's important. And it's those people doing what you say you're going to do, and all those relationships. I can call any one of those people or anyone in my network, and some of those people I haven't talked to in 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, and we will pick up right where we left off, not skip one beat. I am constantly communicating on multiple channels and running in parallel, anywhere from no less than 15 to 40 or 50 different forms of communicating people. I've mastered social media, right? And it's pretty much Facebook, all their tools, as well as LinkedIn. LinkedIn was my first coming out in the social media world because the nature of my work wouldn't let me otherwise do that. So I've been there since day one.
Mm.
I understand the analytics without even looking at it, and understand what it takes to get people's attention and what they want, from imagery to video in 30-second spots. People don't, all this stuff. I talk about that in the book. So the answer to your question is a lot of work,
Mm.
because I never miss an email. I never miss a text. I never miss an SMS. I never miss on all the, I have 7 other forms of communication that people can reach out to me for, right? As part of that. So, um, that's the deal. It's a lot of work, but if you don't, you won't keep it and maintain it unless you communicate with people. And I'm the kind of guy, it's hard for me to say no to people, because I have the ability to change their life. I'll just kind of say it. Last year, or since January, I've had 2 grown men in their 50s call me pleading and crying over the phone. I'll just, right, because they can't get a job.
Mm-hmm.
And I help people get a job. I lay out a certain strategy. I just get them the interview. They
Mm-hmm.
have to do the rest of the work. And if I know them, I can speak to their emotional intelligence and personality. They've got the competencies and the experience. But the really important part is the emotional intelligence and the personality. How would they fit in culture A, B, and C with that company? Because I know all the CSOs around the world, I'll do the courtesy of sometimes calling them if it's a good fit and say, this is not a waste of time. You should interview this person. And I would tell you that 9 out of 10 times that happens. Okay. So
That's
that's the bottom line. You have to keep up with those people, bottom line, right? As part of that. So
yeah, you really you definitely get this conversation going, because for me, I think I feel I want to at least say that emotional intelligence, well, it was definitely something, the emotional intelligence, that I definitely didn't even think about, back in my younger years.
right.
So you being in police work as young as you were,
Yep.
how have you noticed throughout the years, especially from looking at who you are now back to that 19-year-old, you know, man on the police force, how has that emotional intelligence evolved over the years, and how do you continue to evolve it? Because I don't think it's something that we really ever should stop.
Yeah. Yeah, you're quite correct, right? It's evergreen.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. It really is. And listen, I like LinkedIn's and every just coffee and LinkedIn for 2 or 3 hours in the morning, right? And for me, morning means early, really. I always get the worm. Early bird gets the worm. I have a giant box of worms. So, um, I spend the time to go out and reach it. And I see people that are interesting, like you. I reached out to you, right? And it's like, hey, I just want to connect. Well, that's not good enough for me in my world. I want to have dialogue. I want to understand who, what, when, where, why, and how. But actually legitimately,
Mm-hmm.
not cursory.
Right.
Um, and then how can we help each other? There's these rings of synergy that exist, but you don't know unless you engage in conversations and exploit the things that each of you are doing, right? So you have this Bannerman chart, right? All these overlapping rings where there's opportunities to help people and be involved in something that goes back to knowing how to have fun, right? You can go and find those things. So every day I try to schedule a call with somebody new and different in the industry. And I read what they put out there, and I read in between the lines, to be honest with you. And it's really interesting to me, and it's applicable. And it's like, oh, this is a relationship I should get to know, right? And it's amazing the friends. I have a lot of friends, Charles. I got a lot of people to keep up. And with that goes a lot. I'm just going to say it, man. It's a lot of responsibility because I'm not in the business of disappointing people. Very rarely do I say, man, you got to give me a month or two just to catch up or, I can't be involved in this for like 19 other reasons because they conflict with 19 other things, right? As part of that. So I try to be, very honest and overt with people, but everything I do is built from the basis of a relationship, which means you can't put money first,
Mm.
right? It can't be, salesman. It's got to be legitimate, but bringing stuff to people's attention, that's important. That's kind of, one of my ways of bringing it to their attention. And then every time I'm on a call, we get to build the relationship. I leave them with somebody else. I hand off and say, in my network, you should have a relationship with Bill because Bill does this and I know about Bill and it's just, you guys should just have a conversation. So I try to never impart the call without passing it on.
Man, damn, I'm learning a lot over already just listening to you. Well,
So,
listen, I think obviously from your work as being in law enforcement, things like that. I mean, I naturally having family in police and military, I just naturally have a respect that I think I was always taught we should have. And someone like you, it's not just we should have it. You earned that respect. I can see that. So
yeah.
I wanted to ask you, you come across just to me as somebody that I could look to as a leader. So I wanted to start to touch base with you a little bit on your leadership philosophy.
You know, the whole leadership thing is interesting to me, and a lot of people are heavy into leadership principles. A lot of my colleagues that come out of the United States military, in particular, because of its org chart and command and control. Um, so I was not in the military. I started early as a police explorer and wanted to go to college and be a cop early. So I opted to do that. I wanted to go into the military, went through maps and did everything. But at the time, I just wanted to be, just do 2 years and then a couple years of reserves. And the best they could do is like 6 years and 6 years reserves at the high school. That's a longer commitment than I wanted to make. I'm glad I stood up for myself because and went the path that I did because I've had amazing experiences and training as a result. Anyway, what's interesting is I've tried to in the course of my career, we go back to the maintenance piece of it, how critical it is. Sometimes I'll just do random calls like off the wall or in my database and follow up with people because I'm reading in between the lines and people should do this. They should reach out to other people in the industry and friends, right, that are struggling. It could be anything from cancer to death to job loss to divorce to suicide,
Mm.
right? And those are the main things that I see. But you can see it because they're not posting or they're posting with negative commentary, right? Something's off. I do a lot of that just to check in, and they appreciate that, right? It's really, really, really important. It's important to me that I continue to do that. I don't know if I answered that question the way you wanted me to, but I'm happy to drill down deeper.
I what I like is it shows to your authenticity because I think sometimes I ask that question. I think people try to answer it how they think I want it to be answered, but no, I want it to be answered the way you think. Because listen, as much as anybody watching and listening, I'm trying to learn too, and I look to people that I'm always looking to see if I look at somebody and go, could that person be somewhat of a role model in some area for me?
Sure.
And that's a lot of the guests I have on here and someone like yourself. And it leads me to this next point.
Yeah.
Because I think someone like you, the whole don't judge a book by its cover, even me, right? I don't think people will look at either you or me and go and get the technology is the word that would jump out to people off the top of their head, right? I don't know if we look the part.
No.
So but I could tell by reading up on you, looking at some of the things you're doing, it's like, you know what? You definitely blow the whole, you can't teach an old dog new tricks out of the water. And I'm trying to do that myself every day. But I really want to ask you about that combination because I think you're really doing a good job with this, that strategic vision of technology and strategy.
Yeah.
How do you integrate those two, Chuck?
So, technology and strategy. So, people use campaigns, and I'm big on using campaigns on everything that I do, but it's driven by strategy. So, my book being called Yes, Sir, Sir being an acronym, it's strategy, intelligence, and relationships. They are interoperable, right? One drives the other. You need the intel to form the strategy to get the relationship. You need the relationship to get the intel to form the strategy, right? You can work it any way that you want. So technology has a place, right? And it's the cool thing right now. And really it's AI, right? AI is that half the people, I'm of the opinion, really don't understand what those two letters mean in
Mm-hmm.
terms of real world application, cost, return on investment, ability to detect crime, deter crime, and to stop crime, right? So that's where the strategy comes in. And that's why I have a real good understanding because I was a security officer, I was a patrol officer, I was, a commander, I was a chief of police, I was a crime prevention officer. I'm certified in all this stuff in the security over the years. So you take all that stuff, and then you have somebody with an ability to walk into a project and really understand to the lowest levels how effective this is, all the way to things that people don't even understand. So I fill this very wide gap. So strategy becomes really critical. And sometimes technology shouldn't come in at all because it's not cost effective, if you will, or it's labor intensive, or it's, maintenance intensive. And sometimes it's overkill. And sometimes people, it's the old, oh, we're going to bring a guy in from New York City all the way to Texas, this great consultant, right? And so that's a strategy, right? It's like, well, he's a consultant from out of state. He's got to know what the hell he's talking about, right? Sometimes that's true. Sometimes it's not. I get brought in, but I do want to, so that kind of answers your question, but I want to go back to the hats. One of the things that I've been experiencing over the last couple of years is that this cowboy hat's probably got, I don't know, 250,000 air miles on it, right? This hat is made by a very special woman who is extremely talented, has been making hats for 60 years. And I waited a long time to get in line only because of Friends of Chuck relationships,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I'm going to tell you a story about the hat. So this hat would have taken maybe a year or two to get done, one hat, right? She's that good. So she's done a lot of hats for a lot of famous people. She just works out of basically her, garage or building on her own property. And so I flew to another state to get this hat worked on with my friend, my cowboy friend, and we go in and we have a cup of coffee, and that's what you do with folks, right? That are country. And she come with German descent, I could see, because in Texas there's a huge Deutsche or German community here, right? And huge Czechoslovakian influence as well, both in food and culture. People go, what, Texas? Germans and Czechoslovakians? Yeah, okay. Oh, they didn't go to history class. Anyway, um, she you know, I was interested in how she was going to make the hat. Like literally, she would just look at you. The equipment, the origins of hats, toppers and bolos and bowlings and all these, right, come from Paris. I didn't, that's kind of, and she was using mechanical equipment that was 120 years old to make these cowboy hats. Like literally, she put a 10-pound contraption of metal on my head, right? and a piece of paper, and then you smush all these wings on it for perfect circumference alignment with
Mm.
the hat, right? Anyway, I'm documenting all this because I want to make a video, right, and share with the world this great experience. We were there for 2 hours because she just liked to visit, and that's what you have to do with folks. And we had a cup of coffee, but I noticed in one of her rooms she had this in Germany, you have very, tea kettles and all that kind of, like
Hmm.
for like China, the version of a China cabinet. Anyway, she collected cows, these ceramic cows like this, and so when I got back home, I happened to have one from NASA. There's a cow in an astronaut suit. I've had it for a long time. So I just sent it to her and said, "Hey, thank you.
Mm.
Right? Add this to your collection." Man, you would have thought she had flipped out to get a NASA cow to add to this massive collection that she had. My hat was done in 5 weeks
Mm.
instead of a year or two. Right? You
Wow.
just do that things. It was just, she's just a nice lady. That cat, my NASA cow was better served with someone who could get the joy out of that, in their life. I now have two hats, by the way, from her.
That, that
And
is so awesome.
yeah, it's a great story because it's true, and I got to live it, and I got to make somebody. And let me tell you, if I call her, man, she just wants to talk about the cow when I call her, and I try to do that version with everybody. It's a hard balancing act when you have as many people as I do in your life with friends of Chuck, and because so many of those people become personal,
Mm.
relate, right? There's lots of people who follow me, but the people who really know me, right? And so it's tough. It's not easy. I'll be honest with you. It's a balancing act, if I'm being really transparent here.
So, and I mean this in a really good way. You
Sure.
said so much really valuable stuff that I feel like most people will take from this from a professional aspect. I personally am going to take away the story of the hat and the cow. When I think about this down the line in this interview, I will always remember the NASA cow, and I'll picture you in that hat. Like that just for me, that's the personal touch that I think, and I think it's your authenticity, Chuck. I don't even know like if you're totally meaning to do it, but you bring this aspect to the table that is just remember it's memorable in a
Yeah.
good way. So that's really I appreciate the personal story. And also I would have never guessed that that was handmade. So that is really it's really a fantastic thing.
Got a great history to it. I won't give the rest away, but man, this hat, my wife knows at my funeral, this hat will be sitting on top of the urn. So,
Man, well, hopefully that will not be for a really, really long time because you have a lot to still do. All
yeah.
right, just a couple more things I want to ask
Sure.
you. So we touched a little bit, but because your network is so big,
Hmm.
and I am sure that a lot of people within that network are probably looking to you as a role model or a mentor. How
Absolutely.
do you realize do you realize that? Because I know sometimes I ask people that and they go, well, I never really think of myself that way. Are
Oh, yeah.
you purposely looking at yourself that way?
So, yeah, by default. So, yeah, no, listen, I am formally coaching and mentoring at any given time 20 to 40 people, young professionals, women in security, veterans, like literally giving advice on getting your CPP with ASIS International, joining ASIS International, getting ready to transition right from law enforcement, and because I'm still a law enforcement officer in Texas. I'm a master peace officer with TCOL. So this has been 40 years I've had my commission. And in Texas, you don't lose. Other states, it just kind of ends, but not here. An agency carries your commission, and there's no difference between a full-time paid police officer in uniform on patrol and one whether your commission is carried by the agency. the department establishes those rules. You can carry a gun anywhere, you can make an arrest anywhere in the state of Texas. There's no distinction. That's one of the beautiful things of Texas, because our Texas government and the Texas Commission on Law Enforcement said, look, it's good for the community if an officer who's retired or quits wants to have their commission carried, because when they go to 7-Eleven, Home Depot, to the movie theater, down to the grocery store, they can be there to help protect the citizens of Texas, their community, the businesses in Texas, and the people who come and visit. And nothing, none of that's changed. So my point is, I stay connected to that world very intimately, and I have that burden and responsibility, right, as part of the things, that I do. So for me, I'm always mindful in the law enforcement world, in helping people, because I know what they're going through still 40 years later.
Mhm.
And so I can become that mentor to them. I'm mentoring chiefs, assistant chiefs of major metropolitan agencies, to just a patrol guy, 25 years with a sheriff's office out in the middle of nowhere, right? As part of that. And that'll continue, and it'll always continue, because I'm trying to coach them and do my best. What's tough is a lot of them will call, and it's like I said, we got to set expectations, because it's like, oh, I'm going to call Chuck, he'll get me a job. And there are some people that are, genuinely disappointed. I couldn't, I think it's kind of unfair, but that's just the way it works, right? Sometimes. But you just have to work through it with people and be very overt and honest with what you can do. And everybody who calls me, I say, you got your resume done? Let's work on your resume. I'm not a big believer in resumes. Yes, the letter R, resume, but it should be the letter R, relationships. That's what gets you the job interview. And that's a whole different conversation. We'll do another show on human resources in you. It really doesn't work.
I'm, I'm already looking forward to that. Wow, yeah, fantastic insights you continue to add here. All right, so I'll ask you this. I mean, you've obviously accomplished a lot. You've built many, many, many relationships.
Yeah,
And for someone like you, that I will say you've already taken this network to a really large, grand scale.
right.
What's the future then? Because it feels like you're there. It's so big. Like, where can you go from where you're at?
Well, a lot of people have asked me to formalize it into an organization or association or 501(c)(3) or C6, and listen, I'm a member of ASIS for 35 years, and I served in every role just about, including sitting on the international board, as well as many other organizations, both law enforcement, crime prevention associations, security, ACFE, all these different groups, right? So I've got a pretty good picture of what it takes to put on conferences and venues and run associations, right? Because I've exposed myself to that in a very big way. Because of that, I am of the opinion of the people, for the people, and by the people in security, that they are best served, and I'm best served by just keeping Friends of Chuck the way that it is, Friends of Chuck. And you start formalizing it, then you get into policies, processes, procedures, you know, PII data, all this stuff, mumbo jumbo bureaucracy, which just messes everything up. Keeping this at some level of informality has proven to be highly successful. And look, I think I'll tell you one thing, and you please come and join me. I've made an announcement that I'm going to bring back, and I did it for a couple of months, and it just got so big. And I'll be honest with you, like 900 people wanted to be on, Friends of Chuck Security Talk Night,
Hmm.
right? Like we just get together on Zoom, and I had 50 people, because you can't manage more than 50 and be meaningful.
Hmm.
And I had like 50 people afterwards that couldn't get in. They were mad at me. because they wanted to participate and had something to say, and they wanted to be in the Friends of Chuck thing. And I guess I could do that and then mute everybody and have 500 people, and
Mhm.
talk about stuff and bring on a guest speaker. But to me, see, it gets all formal, and I want to keep it informal. If you have 50 people, everybody gets to know your name, where you work, what you do, what's going on, how can we work together and build meaningful relationships based on the Friends of Chuck mantra, right? Helping other people find a job, networking, doing business together. So, so I'm going to bring that back this month, and you'll see it on LinkedIn. It usually fills up in about 30 minutes once I make the announcement. So I hope that kind of answers your question. It's a challenge.
In the best way, hearing you describe that, I'll say it like this: it was almost taking me back to a simpler time that I kind of wish I would have grown up in and been a part of. And I think you're really bringing that back, and what those values of, I know my grandparents and those folks back then. Yeah, and I'm all for it, Chuck. I think we need to bring that back. And man, you're leading the charge, and I am really, really happy to finally have gotten a chance to talk to you and meet you more on a personal level. So thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. I appreciate spending the time on here, and hopefully this resonates with somebody, right? If you can just reach one person and make some kind of difference, let me know, and I'm happy to send me the address and name of the person, and I'm happy to ship a book out to them in a coin. Always like to leave people with something that is actionable. And if you do that, then you pay it forward, right?
Yeah, definitely. I'm looking forward to I was telling someone the other day, when I do these podcasts,
Mhm.
before I put them out, I sit and I listen to them back while I'm working or whatnot. And it's amazing all the stuff I miss as we're having the conversation. And I get as much or more out of it. And I know this is going to be one of the ones at the top of the list that I'm going to be writing notes saying, damn, that was really good. So yeah, this was fantastic. And I can't wait to get this out to people, start sharing some clips. And not that you need it, but let's build this friends they'll call this Chuck times two. Actually, we'll build this a little further out, man. So thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, no, fantastic. Tell folks, just LinkedIn with me, right? I'm responsive, and everything gets put in queue, right? So I try to respond to, and I do eventually, everything, and always happy to assist. And I'm glad I was able to bring some value today. That's important.
Yes, sir. You brought value to me, so I'm pretty sure it's going to bring value to a lot of people. Well, that being said, I really appreciate everyone who tunes in on a weekly basis, and thanks to you all, I get to talk to amazing people like Chuck Andrews. So make sure you follow him on LinkedIn. I'll make sure to have some good info in the show notes, and let's just keep working and make this world a better place, because God knows we need it. So thanks again, Chuck.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Take care. Bye.
This has been the Bear Essentials. Thanks for listening, and remember, never hibernate on your goals.